15th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees. It's 16 in Smiths Falls, and we've got some scattered showers right now. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The public inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act gets underway today. The probe, it's required by law, comes 8 months after police used powers in the act to break up convoy protests that blocked some border crossings and occupied the streets of the capital for 3 weeks. Here's Cormac McSweeney with more.
The public hearings will last 6 weeks as a justice examines what led to the Emergencies Act being invoked for the first time, the government's reasons to take this step, and how authorities utilize their temporary new powers. The Prime Minister and the government have claimed it was necessary to restore order to the streets of the capital and to break up blockades at the border, but critics feel differently. Kara Zwiebel with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association believes the decision was unlawful and unconstitutional.
In our view, the government has yet to prove that the legal threshold to invoke the act was met.
This inquiry will examine documents from governments and law enforcement, and 65 people are on the witness list, including the Prime Minister, organizers of the convoy, and police officials. A final report with findings and recommendations is due in February. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 9:01. Let's take a look at your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
We'll have showers moving in this morning, mild temperatures this morning, afternoon highs near 16 with rain for the afternoon. Still some showers lingering through the overnight as fog develops through Friday morning. So just be mindful on your morning commute. You may be encountering some poor visibility. For Friday, mainly sunny and then increasing cloud, highs near 15. For today, 16 degrees.
Starting Monday, everyone aged 12 and older in Ontario will be eligible to get a COVID-19 bivalent booster in this province. Our Laura Carney with more.
The province expanding the age following Health Canada's approval of the Pfizer bivalent vaccine. Appointments can be booked starting now through the provincial portal. Previously, only people 18 and older were eligible for the Moderna bivalent shot. It is recommended you wait 6 months between doses, but the province says you can get it as early as 3 months after your last one. Now, for those who've been wondering about the province's flu shot plan, while shots have started going into arms, the province says starting November 1st, the flu shot will be available for the general public. You can get both the COVID shot and the flu shot at the same time. Health Minister Sylvia Jones says getting vaccinated remains the best defense against the flu and COVID-19 to help keep Ontarians healthy and out of hospitals. Laura Carney, City News.
A candidate for city councillor apologizing after he was caught on video removing an opponent's flyer from a doorway while canvassing. Video posted by Teo Simmons, a candidate in Barhaven West, shows a man that appears to be David Hill, a fellow candidate, dropping an opponent's flyer to the ground before placing his own in the doorframe. Hill says he's reached out to Simmons to apologize and is offering a sincere apology to everyone in the area. He's calling it a lapse in judgment. The municipal election is set for October 24th. Now to the mayoral race, where City News has learned that Mark Sutcliffe is revealing his economic growth plan for Ottawa today, and he will join the Rob Snow Show around 9:15 with Rob to discuss. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh, it's a wet one. And if you have not been to the Gatineau Hills to take in the stunning fall foliage this season, I think after today you will have missed your opportunity. Rainy, windy, weather story of the day. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. What a wonderful program we have for you today. A little bit of everything. Coming right up, 11 days to go now until someone wins this municipal election campaign and becomes the next mayor of Ottawa. TV debate tonight. David tells me that's happening during the 6 o'clock news on television. So, big day for the candidates in this very close race for mayor. One of the candidates for mayor is Mark Sutcliffe. He'll be joining me in a few minutes from now. He's out with his plan for a strong local economy. He's promising things like one-stop shopping to make it easier for business to cut through all the red tape at City Hall for things like permits and licenses and whatnot. A talent summit Tax relief for small businesses. Haven't heard much about tax relief in this campaign. A lot of emphasis on the tourism industry. I mean, that's Ottawa's third largest industry. The tourism industry. Although, David, I once saw a list. Top destination, number one, top destination for tourists to Ottawa.
And?
The casino in Hull.
But that's not even in Ottawa.
No, but they're tourists to Ottawa. And then they take a cab over to go to the casino in Hull. There are big issues, though, with our local economy. Lots of question marks, uncertainty because of things like the work from home plan for the government workers and lots of technology workers as well. What does that mean for our downtown core? Some worry about the situation with homelessness and mental illness and substance abuse and what that means for the Byward market. We've talked a lot about these issues on this show. So we'll get into some of the bigger picture ideas that are coming from Mark Sutcliffe coming up in just a few minutes from now. And then we're not going to talk about politics after the 9:30 news today. We are instead going to talk about the Ottawa Senators. And what a welcome change of pace that is. 30 years of Senators hockey, and I think with very, very few exceptions, our two guests this morning have followed just about every minute of this hockey team. From the thrill of victory to the agony of defeat. There's been a lot of agony over the last few years. Nothing but agony. But it all starts tonight for the Ottawa Senators on the road in Buffalo against the Sabres. It has been, to say the least, I'm calling it an era. It's been a disappointing era for the Ottawa Senators. Because it seems like an era has passed since the Senators last made the playoffs. There are great expectations for this club this season, given everything that happened in the offseason. There were trades, there were free agent signings, there were contract extensions. Joining us this morning, just after the 9:30 news, will be longtime Ottawa hockey columnist Wayne Scanlon, writes for Sportsnet.ca, and veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster Steve Warren from the Sens Nation podcast. 25 minutes of nothing but Senators talk. Do I have the best job or what? Also this morning, did I mention there are only 11 days to go until the municipal election campaign ends? I believe I did, but let's say that again, 11 days to go. Randall Denley has a column in The Citizen this morning in the print edition about the municipal election campaign, about the race for mayor, about the fiscal plans from the two frontrunners, Catherine McKenney and Mark Sutcliffe. Randall's with us every Thursday, so it's perfect timing that he is joining us. And here after the 11:30 news is Professor Elliot Tepper from the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University here in Ottawa. He joins us every week and helps us to try and make sense of this complicated world of ours. We have a war in Ukraine raging on. A Communist Party Congress set to begin in China. It's going to be an election in Israel. Another one. And check out the front page in the National Post this morning is quite provocative, isn't it? Above the fold, National Post print edition, the 2022 Iranian Revolution has begun, says the National Post opinion writer this morning. A bold claim to make. We will ask the professor about it right after the 11:30 news. I have to tell you, it's going to be a brutal start to the trading day on the stock exchange. The American inflation rate came out about 40 minutes ago, and it was much hotter than expected. The economists were looking at something like 8%, maybe 8.1. Instead, it came in at 8.2. And the so-called core inflation number is what really worries everyone who is supposed to be worried about this stuff. That takes out food prices, energy prices, because those are considered to be volatile. That came in at 6.6%. And again, it was hotter than what was expected because, and core inflation, the worry is core inflation is going to be harder to beat out of the economy with higher interest rates. So as soon as that number hit the terminals, it was a fast move south for the stock market. They're worried about things like higher wages and higher housing costs because of higher mortgage rates and higher rents. Like, take the example, there was almost a rail strike in the United States. It was going to shut down the entire rail industry in the United States. All the railway workers were going to go on strike. That strike was averted because the workers got a 24% raise over 5 years. That's the kind of thing that has the U.S. Fed worried, that has the Bank of Canada worried. And it's worrying for everyone's pocketbook because it's going to mean higher interest rates. Higher interest rates for longer because it's going to take longer for inflation to ease off. So we're going to cover that story throughout the day. And in between all of it, we'll do a talkback hour. Serious stuff today. Between 10 and 11 o'clock. Topic that kind of fits the weather, really. I think we really need to talk about MAID again. Medical assistance in dying. We did a few months ago. I want to get into this topic again with you today. We have many disturbing news stories recently, from Winnipeg to Parliament Hill, Montreal. People accessing MAID because their governments are letting them down. Not because they're near the end of their lives, because government is robbing them of any quality of life. And troubling testimony from a doctor from Quebec on Parliament Hill about euthanizing seriously ill babies. The world is taking notice, and some people are asking, what are they doing in Canada? Why is the Canadian government making it so easy for people to take their own lives? It may not be a happy topic, but it's an important one. And on this show, there's no news we won't talk about. It's the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show. Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Monsieur de Champlain, when I finish paddling through this wilderness and reach China, I shall greet them wearing this.
Monsieur Nicolet, your mission shall be for the honor of the King and the Holy Faith.
In the summer of 1634, Jean Nicolet set off from Quebec to find a trade route that would link Europe and North America with China.
But where is it?
Further. I know the place you are seeking.
For months, Nicolet pushed through the wilderness, searching for the Western Sea.
Georgia! Mississippi!
What did he say?
He says, Mississippi, great water.
Mississippi, the sea, China.
Jean Nicolet was wrong. It was Lake Michigan, not the Pacific. But others would follow his dream, Joliet, La Salle, the La Vérendrys, and they would map most of North America from the Rockies to the Gulf of Mexico.
Hi, so hi from the Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
This is the most competitive municipal election campaign, I think, since amalgamation. And someone will become the next mayor of Ottawa on the 24th of October. Mark Sutcliffe hopes it's him. His plan for a strong local economy is out, and to talk about it, he's back with us on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. It's always a pleasure to be on the Rob Snow Show.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Nice to have you back, Mark. It's a very detailed plan. We don't have time to go through it all. It's all on your website. But even before we get into some of the details, what I want to ask you is this. Given your background as an entrepreneur, do you think the city should be run as a business? And I ask that because Ottawa had a mayor who thought the city should be run more like a business, and it didn't work out so well. There were battles with the city's unions. There was a long winter bus strike. The city council was totally at odds with the mayor. Do you think the city should be run more like a business?
No, I don't. The city is not a business. But I think there are important principles that we can bring to City Hall. And I have a long record in the community, not just as an entrepreneur, but as somebody who has worked very hard on economic development in the city. I was one of the founders of the Ottawa Business Journal. I created many of the events that people now know about, the 40 Under 40, the Best Ottawa Business Awards, the BOBS that happen every year that celebrate the best businesses in Ottawa. I was the board chair of the Board of Trade. I was a board member of Invest Ottawa. So I have a long record in the community of contributing to building our economy. And as you know, Rob, everything starts with our economy. If we don't have a strong economy in Ottawa, we can't fund all the priorities we have as a community, whether that's homelessness and housing, whether that's public transit, whether that's fixing our roads. We need a strong economy. We need people to have jobs. We need there to be more economic growth. And this is a really critical time for Ottawa right now because we have to face some of the challenges that we're facing as a city. The federal government is undergoing change in terms of where employees are being located. That could be a threat to Ottawa's economy going forward. The tourism sector is still recovering from COVID, and we've learned that it's recovering more slowly than other tourism markets in Canada and the United States. So we need to take some really clear action right now to grow our economy.
Let me jump in there. This is where I want to go because times have changed. We have 135,000 people work for the federal government in the National Capital Region. And they may not return to the office, at least on a full-time basis, maybe ever again. So what can the municipal government do to plan for this kind of huge change?
There's a couple things we need to do, Rob. First of all, we need to address the impact that that's going to have on downtown Ottawa. Downtown Ottawa may undergo the greatest change it's ever undergone as a result of potential hybrid work at the federal government, of people not working as much in downtown office buildings. So I have a downtown revitalization plan. There's a lot of detail to it. I won't go into all of it now. But we need to make downtown Ottawa a vibrant place again, with more people living downtown and with major attractions that are bringing people downtown. We need to revitalize our tourism economy and get more people visiting Ottawa for conventions and for just to visit the national capital. We need another major attraction downtown. we need more recurring events that are happening in Ottawa. It's great when we go after things like the Juno Awards, but they happen once and then they're gone. We need events like Blues Fest and Ottawa Race Weekend and other recurring events that bring people to Ottawa. So there's a lot we need to do to fix downtown Ottawa, because this is a period of extraordinary change for the future of downtown. And as you point out, Rob, if federal government workers are not working downtown, they may not even be working they may not even be living in Ottawa.
Right.
They're working remotely.
Yeah. And not just government workers. Not just government workers. I have a news release here from Shopify. Now, whenever Shopify used to release news releases, they used to say Dateline Ottawa, meaning the headquarters is in Ottawa. Now, whenever Shopify releases a news release, it says internet, everywhere. Internet, everywhere, right? That's Toby Lutke's vision. And we know what happened to Shopify's downtown headquarters. Shopify people can work from anywhere. Not just in Ottawa. We'd love to have lots of Shopify and lots of high-tech workers here in Ottawa paying taxes here, shopping in Ottawa stores. How does the municipal government help create those conditions?
So a couple of things, Rob. First of all, we need to make sure Ottawa is a great place to start a business. And, I'll remind everyone the story of Shopify. Toby Lutke started Shopify in Ottawa because his future wife was living in Ottawa. So he came here for her. That's the only reason Toby Lutke started Shopify in Ottawa, is because his then girlfriend, future wife, was from here. So we need to create an environment in Ottawa where people who go to university here want to stay in Ottawa and start a business here, where other people who move to Ottawa want to stay and start businesses, where people who grow up in Ottawa don't move somewhere else to start a business, they stay here. So that's number one. Number two, we have to attract the best and brightest talent in the world to Ottawa, and we need to make sure that this is a great place to live, because otherwise people will choose to live somewhere else even if they work for an Ottawa company. And already Ottawa companies, like many other companies in North America, are hiring workers in other cities because they're looking for talent. And if somebody's available who lives in Calgary or Victoria and they can work virtually, then they're hiring them, which means it's a loss for Ottawa. So the only way the city can address that, or the most effective way the city can address that, is to make sure Ottawa is a great place to live. So we've got to keep taxes as low as possible. We've got to have lots of entertainment and activity in Ottawa so people like to live here. We've got to make sure it's easy to get around the city. All the things that we're talking about in this campaign, we have to make sure Ottawa is a great place to live, that it's an affordable place to live, a safe place to live, that there's reliable services, that families can live here, and that's what's going to keep people in Ottawa, because their job may not keep them here anymore.
Okay. I want to talk about your plan for small business red tape. Okay. Let me give you an example. I was browsing some meeting minutes from a city transportation committee meeting, a meeting that was held not recently. It goes back a while, but it's a scenario that plays out all the time at City Hall. You want to get something approved, you have to knock on a dozen doors. This was an application for a restaurant patio in the Glebe on Strathcona. I'm sure you know where that is, in the Glebe. And the report submitted to the city is 10 pages long. And it goes through the encroachment bylaw, the public consultations. It involved the deputy city manager, the chief of development review services, the general manager of planning and growth management, the city's right-of-ways, bylaws, permits, and inspection unit. The BIA had to be consulted. The local community association had to be consulted. It went to the accessibility advisory committee, the planning committee, and city council. This was a $6,000 patio. And the restaurant had to submit detailed technical drawings to the city, right down to where they put the salad fridge. So how do you speed something like that up?
We have to take a totally different approach at City Hall going forward, and that's why I've talked about creating a one-stop shop or a single window of service for businesses who are looking to the city to get permission, to get permits, to get other paperwork processed at City Hall. There's way too much of exactly what you describe, where people are waiting for ages for an answer, and then they're bounced from one department to another, and there's just an extraordinary burden placed on a small business owner to do something that would actually be positive for their business and positive for their customers and positive for the community. So we've got to stop this approach. We obviously have to respect bylaws. We have to respect the rules. But we've got to start saying yes more often. We've got to start treating some of these things as opportunities and create an environment where it's easier to do business in Ottawa, because otherwise people won't do business in Ottawa.
All right, here's a question for you. I'm not originally from Ottawa, you know that, but in my experience, many, many years ago, as a young man, much younger man, thinner man with more hair, in addition to being the capital city, elsewhere in Canada, Ottawa had this reputation as being clean. And that's not an exaggeration. Oh, when you go to Ottawa, you'll be amazed at how clean it is. I don't know if we could brag about that now, Mark Sutcliffe. Do you think Ottawa is as clean as it could be? And if it was cleaner, how would that help the economy?
Absolutely not. Ottawa is not as clean as it used to be. And, I think we did have a great reputation for being a beautiful, clean city many years ago. And now if you look at the reviews that people write online about our city after they visit, there's a lot of criticisms. Some of it's about construction, which is inevitable because there's always going to be construction and resurfacing of roads, and those kinds of things are annoying and they can be inconvenient, but we've got to do it from time to time. But a lot of it is just that, we're not cutting the grass as often as we used to. We're not trimming the weeds as often as we used to. We're not picking up the garbage as often as we used to. And I think we've been dining out on our past reputation for too long. And we need to make the city as attractive as possible for visitors, for people who are coming here to do business, for people who live in Ottawa, for families. Again, we're in a much different era now where people can choose to live wherever they want and work wherever they want, and those two things are no longer connected. So we need to have Ottawa as a destination of choice for people, whether they are choosing a place to live or visit. It has to be competitive. It has to be a city that people want to be in. So there's a lot we can do. We already have lots of great things like Blues Fest, like other events. We've got a lot we can work with, but we have to do better.
Okay. That's our time. Good luck the rest of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
No problem. Bye-bye. Okay, that's Mark Sutcliffe. He's candidate for mayor. And again, televised debate tonight, I understand. 6 o'clock, 9:28. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
traffic and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Thursday, October the 13th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, some showers and 13. It's 15 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. The public inquiry examining the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act in February is set to begin today. Several parties to the inquiry are expected to appear throughout the weeks-long process, including the Prime Minister, convoy leaders, police forces, and local officials. The first day will mostly consist of presenting documents and evidence ahead of witness testimony that will begin tomorrow. The investigation continues today into a shooting at a home north of Toronto that left 2 police officers and another man dead. Ontario's police watchdog says the South Simcoe police officers died in hospital and the 23-year-old man died at the home after an exchange of gunfire Tuesday night in Innisfil. The province of Ontario has announced that everyone aged 12 and older will be eligible to get Pfizer's bivalent COVID-19 booster starting next Monday. Appointments can be booked now through the COVID-19 vaccination portal or by phone. And it's the Senators' season opener tonight. The squad is in Buffalo with actual expectations this year. It's the first game of the season. Home opener is next Tuesday. For more on the upcoming season, City News gets sensed with Steve Warren and Wayne Scanlon coming up right here on The Rob Snow Show. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Long shot in on Shields, head off the stick of Alfredson. Who has it? It's good!
Shabbat takes the puck wide. Here he comes. Shabbat in. Scores. What a goal by Thomas Shabbat.
Brady Tkachuk got there, and now he's off to the races. Brady Tkachuk, breakaway shoots, scores! Brady Tkachuk!
A new season starts tonight for the Ottawa Senators in Buffalo. Great expectations for the Ottawa Senators, given everything that happened in the offseason. The trades, the free agent signings, the contract extensions. We're joined this morning by longtime Ottawa hockey columnist Wayne Scanlon, Sportsnet.ca. Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Rob.
And veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster Steve Warren from the Sens Nation podcast. Good morning, Steve Warren.
Rob, good to be here.
Hey, it's great to talk to both of you this morning. Steve, what was the most important move in the offseason for the Ottawa Senators, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say I would probably go with the Alex DeBrincat acquisition. I think that what he brings to the table offensively, he's just going to be one of those guys. He's been a reliable goal scorer for this, for the Chicago Blackhawks for the last few seasons. And I think that and the Claude Giroux signing. I mean, the Giroux signing it just sends a message that this team has changed its ways to a degree, and that the free agent market is not completely closed to them. That they're willing, when they need to go out and get what they need to supplement this team. So those would be the two big ones for me.
Wayne?
Yeah, to pick up on what Steve said, I'd say it's Claude Giroux, because I think that's the kind of signing that just wasn't possible in the last few years. It was kind of like the Senators don't do those things. They don't get that kind of free agent. And for a guy like Claude Giroux to come home, homegrown guy, played for the Gatineau Olympique, it kind of sent a message that it's a different way of doing business all of a sudden.
And how has he looked, Wayne Scanlon?
Great. And,
really?
If you ask me a couple of the things that I've noticed during camp, or maybe what stood out the most, I would say two things. And one would be the way that Giroux and DeBrincat have just got this instant chemistry. I think they were on the ice together weeks before training camp even started, and they're magic together. Now, who their center is going to be is a little bit in question right now. They've kind of flopped Tim Stutzla for Josh Norris, and Norris is going to be playing with those two. And the other thing that stood out of camp was the return of Shane Pinto. And this is a guy that impressed us a year ago in camp and then got hurt and missed most of the season. But he is back, and he hasn't played a minute with Tyler Mott and Matthew Joseph before, this camp and this preseason, and they've looked terrific as a third line. So those are a couple of things that really stood out for me.
And Steve, you've been singing his praises as well. Shane Pinto.
Oh, absolutely. He's not a guy that at all looks like he had the entire year off last year due to injury. He looks like he had a full year of development. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have a hard time keeping that guy. If he's in the pace he's on right now, and there's only preseason, so we always have that caveat, but I'm going to have a hard time keeping him out of my top six, even as good as Ottawa's top six is. That's how good I think Shane Pinto is going to be, because unlike the other two centermen, who are awesome offensively, I think Pinto brings the defensive component to the center ice position, and DJ Smith is going to have a hard time keeping that out of his top six for very long.
Okay. So what's his status? Is he considered a rookie?
He's still a rookie. He could win the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year. So that's how little he played a little bit when he came out of North Dakota, in the previous spring, and then I don't know, what was it, 5 or 6 games last year before getting hurt. So yeah, he still qualifies as a rookie.
Okay, so maybe we can. Let's take a look at the depth chart and maybe start from the goaltenders and work our way out from there. Big changes for the Ottawa Senators in goal. What do you think of this tandem? I know that Cam Talbot is injured right now, but what do you think of the two goaltenders, Wayne Scanlon?
I like it. I think they're miles ahead of last year. This is the best tandem they've had in years. Forsberg just really blossomed last year. He's a guy that the Sens kind of picked up off the waiver wire scrap heap. At 29 years of age, he earned a 3-year contract with the Sens. Tremendous. I don't know where the Sens would have been last year without him. And I think with a better team in front of him, I see great things. It's unfortunate that Cam Talbot got hurt because, he brings kind of a veteran, the kind of veteran presence and stability that we hoped that Matt Murray would bring, and certainly did not. But I think Forsberg and Talbot will be great. Meanwhile, Hellberg is brought in, just as kind of an emergency backup, but hopefully Talbot gets back into the mix, by the end of the month, early November.
Yeah. So compared to seasons past, Steve, how does this tandem measure up in your opinion?
I think it's an improvement for sure. We saw, Matt Murray, his debut with Toronto didn't go so great. I think the die was cast on what he was going to be, and I really think Toronto's made a mistake there, to be honest. So I think Forsberg represents an upgrade. He outdueled him last season. He had a winning record last year for the Ottawa Senators. So you have to be encouraged by that. I will say the one concern I have about Forsberg as the guy, it's a case of anytime you're asking someone to do something they've never done before, and that is being a number one goalie in the NHL, you hope they can handle it, but you really don't know until they actually do it. And I thought that was a fantastic move to bring in Cam Talbot as your plan B, your insurance policy. And I think he's going to be back sooner rather than later. I had a chance to sit down with Talbot for about an hour, and he's thinking he's back at the end of October from that injury. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think generally speaking, to answer your question, Rob, I think the Sens goaltending situation is in better shape than it's been in years.
And he's excited to be here, Steve?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It went a little sideways in Minnesota. He felt like he was going to be the guy there. He kind of resented, I think. He didn't say as much, but I think he kind of resented. He's an NHL All-Star last season. They bring in Marc-Andre Fleury at the trade deadline, which basically tells a goalie that they're not really happy with the status quo going into the playoffs. And so that's what led to his being traded away. And Minnesota's loss is Ottawa's gain.
Okay, so when you read the sports media, you listen to the analysts on the sports talk shows and TV shows, the big question marks about this team this season is the defense. How well the defense will hold up. How would you assess the defensive core of the Ottawa Senators going into the season starter tonight, Wayne Scanlon?
Well, it's going to be, I think, a work in progress. I think if we had a slightly older and more veteran Jake Sanderson, I think that could make a difference because he's a raw rookie coming in. But you've got a pretty nice top pair with Zub and Thomas Chabot. You've got the defensive stability of Zub, and then the all-around play, offensive zest of Chabot. Sanderson's going to have a veteran beside him in Travis Hamonic, who actually played pretty well coming in last season at the deadline. And then Eric Brandstrom is again going to get an opportunity, and he's alongside a veteran as well in Nick Holden. So it's not a horrible defensive group with Nikita Zaitsev as the seventh man right now. But I think it's the worst-kept secret in hockey that the Senators want to upgrade their defense position. They'd like to bring in a top-four type player, and Jacob Chikrin of the Arizona Coyotes is the guy that's being talked about the most. But so far, a deal has not yet been worked out. Steve, on the D.
They definitely lack that depth that you'd like. They have some nice defensemen there, but there's so much, there's so much youth in a Jake Sanderson. What he'll be in 2 years, that will be fantastic. I think one wild card to watch in the early part of the season is Eric Brandstrom. In the preseason anyway, and I know it's preseason, but he seemed to take a step forward confidence-wise. When he is confident and has the puck on his stick, he is a real asset back there. So, if he can keep that trajectory up, the Sens may have something there. It's a big leap compared to where he's been in recent seasons, but who knows? If he keeps going in that direction, maybe he's going to take over for Hamonic inside that top four. It's hard to say, but I think one thing from the defensive core's perspective is they're going to improve as a group because the Ottawa Senators are going to have the puck a lot more this season. That forward core right now is so skilled and considerably better than last year that's going to make everybody. That's going to make goaltending better. That's going to make the defense better simply because you're not getting scored on. You're not getting burned when you have the puck.
Okay. So, the forwards highly touted, lots of money being spent there for many, many years to come now. Who's on the number one line? What's the number one line here, Wayne? Well,
that's the beauty of it. We don't even know at this point, which is the number one line. They've already flip-flopped centers. You could say it's Stutzler with Tkachuk and Batherson, but after game one, it might be clear that it's Norris, DeBrincat, and Giroux, and the centers could flip again. As Steve alluded to, Pinto could easily slide into the top six. So the beauty of this, along with the power play, is that there are just so many pieces. There's just so much potential that in a lot of ways you can't go wrong. It doesn't really matter which one you call number one. You've got a dynamite top six.
Yeah. Nice problem to have, Steve.
Absolutely, yeah. And how can you pinpoint one unit that you'd say is the number one? I think there's going to be flip-flopping in the early going. I'm a little surprised, honestly, that they've switched centers, given that Tkachuk, Norris, and Batherson have been such a mainstay for this club in the last couple of years. It almost speaks to me to DJ Smith being a little skittish, like just being so focused on having a better start. The last 2 years have been disastrous. Like throw a grenade on yourself in the first month. They basically played themselves out of a playoff spot in the very first month. So I think you're going to see some tinkering because I think DJ Smith understands what's on the line here. And that if this team has another start like that, he's not going to survive until Christmas.
Okay, we'll be right back. We're talking Senators hockey, opening night for the Ottawa Senators. They're in Buffalo, 7 o'clock. Wayne Scanlon with us from Sportsnet.ca and Steve Warren from the Sens Nation podcast. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
I would like to see politicians and government overall, especially locals, start to support local business more. Because we've had so many businesses that have shut down, and I would like to see local business grow and politicians give more, whether that's a financial contribution or some other layer of support, but something to encourage them to keep business going.
$20. And Maggie, Mrs. Calabash, come into my kitchen. A quick mayonnaise, egg yolks, garlic, Dijon mustard, lemon juice, olive oil, immersion blender. Go down, come up, voila, mayonnaise. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. Yeah.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Back talking Ottawa Senators hockey. Opening night for the Ottawa Senators on the road in Buffalo with Wayne Scanlon, Sportsnet.ca, Steve Warren from the Sens Nation podcast. Want to pick up, Wayne, on something Steve mentioned. And that's, what's on the line here for DJ Smith, the head coach, who I believe now is entering his 4th season as the head coach of this club. An under 500 record, not much to work with. Had to deal with the COVID season and all the peculiarities about that. What's on the line for him? He's been given all of these weapons. They've spent all of this money. What's on the line for him?
Well, I think he has to show now that he can be a coach of a team that contends. Up until now, he hasn't been asked to do that. He's been asked to bring along the young players and try to make a defenseman out of Eric Brandstrom and not just an AHL player, and introduce Tim Stützle, to the NHL and bring along Brady Tkachuk as a young captain. All these pieces that have kind of fit in nicely in the last few years. Drake Batherson and Shane Pinto, as we've talked about. But now you've got the big boys. Now you've got DeBrincat, you've got Giroux, you've got a really nice forward core. You think you're getting pretty good on the blue line, some improvement to be made there. You've got decent goaltending. They should be in the mix for a playoff spot. They don't necessarily have to make the playoffs this year, but they have to at least be knocking on the door and be playing meaningful hockey right into the spring.
Yeah. Agreed, Steve? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that really DJ Smith has been handed the keys to a decent sports car here, and it's got to be better than the last 2 years. You can't show up in the second half and give people some hope when you're kind of in silly season. You're completely out of it. You start to play well, then right out of the gate, they've got to be very good, and there's going to be pressure. Right now, there's lots of goodwill, I think, between head coach DJ Smith and GM Pierre Dorion. But put yourself in Dorion's shoes for a second. He's been patted on the back all summer. Summer of Pierre, people talk about.
Yep.
And if that all goes away with a terrible start, then we're going to see drinks being thrown around in luxury suites, and we're going to see that goodwill go away fairly quickly. So there's lots of pressure on DJ Smith because right now everything seems great, but if things turn sideways, I really think it's going to be his job.
Okay. I have last season's standings in front of me, and to catch the final wild card spot, it was Washington that did that last season. Washington had 100 points to make the playoffs as the last wild card spot. Could this be a 100-point team? What do you think, Wayne Scanlon?
I think potentially. I think that would be a drastic improvement. This is a team that missed the playoffs by 27 points last season, so that's a big leap. They're going to have to show not just that they can bring it some nights, but they can bring it most nights. I mean, that's the mark of a consistent team, that you're putting up 100 points like that. Like Steve and I got used to watching the Senators in the late 90s and early 2000s. They consistently were a 100-point team. This team has to prove that it can do that. I think of it as a team that potentially could target one of those final spots, a wild card spot, or possibly even fourth in the Atlantic. I see the Bruins with a lot of injuries, and they're relying on some real veteran players. Florida, I don't think is going to be as strong as last year. Other teams are going to improve, like Detroit, like Buffalo, that they're playing tonight. But I think Ottawa really has the inside track to be that team that can replace somebody else from that top four.
What do you think, Steve? 100 points? You see that in this team?
I think everything would absolutely have to go perfectly for that to occur. I'm a little more optimistic, though, in that I think last season was probably more of an anomaly. I think 100 points, I don't think you'll need that this year.
Okay.
I think that playoff teams in that 8 and 7 spot in the conference, I think 93, 95 points might get it done. Just given that the top 8 last year were so much better than the bottom 8 last year. I just feel like that bottom 8, including the Senators and the Sabres, who we'll see tonight, they've all taken big step forward. So I think you're going to see the best teams from last year in the East come back to the pack a little bit, making it just a little bit easier for teams like the Sens to jump up and maybe grab that 8th playoff spot.
Okay. What are you hearing about what this incredible offseason, all these signings, the investments in these exciting young players, what is it going to mean for the business side for the Ottawa Senators? Are you hearing anything about, say, increased season ticket sales, these kinds of things? What do you know about that, Wayne? Anything? Nothing?
Well, I know they hit pretty much rock bottom last year. I mean, they had fewer than 5,000 season ticket packages, so the fact that they're up a lot,
right?
You're starting with the bar set pretty low, so they've got a long way to go, and I think there's always a lag between performance and a rush to the ticket office. This team had its biggest ticket demand the year after they went to the Cup final, not the year of the Cup final. So I think it's going to take a little while. They're going to have to show it on the ice, but I think there's going to be a lot of buzz around this team, and I think the value of the franchise is going up. And should there be a sale, should the Melnyk sisters decide they don't want to be part of this and maybe move the team in the future, and I don't think it's going anywhere except downtown to LeBreton Flats, I think the the future is very bright for this franchise in every aspect, business side, hockey side, the whole kit and caboodle.
They seem engaged, though, in it, Wayne, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to decide in the weeks and months ahead. It's a big undertaking, and it's probably maybe not what they thought their future was going to be, and certainly not so suddenly. So I think there's a lot to think about. And even if they're part of the future, maybe they're maybe part of the team gets sold. Maybe there's other business partners coming in. I think there's a lot of ways this thing could be sliced up.
Yeah, winning solves a lot of problems, Steve. It's been said in sports, winning solves a lot of problems, but they haven't won anything yet. So what do you think it'll take to get the fans back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Winning is step one. But, I think I'd be disappointed if the fans haven't responded here, and it sounds like they have. The club's top executive, and Anthony LeBlanc, he's talked in the off-season about how robust that the ticket sales have been this off-season. Because, honestly, the fans, they were looking for new ownership. They were looking for a commitment to reinvesting in the team. And, they've gotten what they wanted. And so, and man, it's an exciting team. I don't know that it's going to be immediately a playoff team, but they're on their way. And if the fans, in a general way, don't respond by coming out to the games in big numbers, that would be fairly disappointing, because that's what the claim has been in recent seasons. We've had Melnick out billboards. We've had complaints about, we never do anything in free agency, and they don't reinvest in the team. And, at this stage of the game, the fans have gotten what they wanted. So I would expect that we're going to have a great season that way.
All right. Who had the Habs beating the Leafs last night?
Steve, for sure.
You must have loved that, Steve. You must have loved that. Hey.
It's a little early for blue team elimination watches, but I may go to it.
Oh, my gosh.
Anything can happen. Is this Sabres team any good?
They're very good.
They're very good? Okay.
They've improved a lot. I don't think they've improved as much as Ottawa, but it should be a good game tonight.
All right. Enjoy the ride to both of you. It's going to be a lot of fun to cover this team, I think, this season, and you're lucky to be in the position that you are. I'm quite jealous, actually. Thanks to both of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, boys.
Read Wayne Scanlon at sportsnet.ca and listen to Steve Warren on all your podcasting platforms. He's with the Sens Nation podcast. Talkback Hour comes up right after the news at 750-1310, 750-1310 on this very serious issue. This is the Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
He fell.
Whoa, I'm not driving. I'm way too stoned. How are you feeling, Veer?
Oh, since we had that talk, I'm not driving tonight at all.
What about you, Dave?
You only had a couple of drinks.
And only a couple of puffs.
I don't drink and drive. No way I'm getting behind the wheel when I smoked weed, too.
How are we getting home, then?
Oh, you can drive, Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Take one for the team, buddy.
Don't let weed and alcohol influence your decision to drive.
Yeah, I need a ride. There we go.
Hey, going back in, okay?
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Thursday, October the 13th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we're looking at some 13 degrees with some scattered showers. It's 16 degrees in Smiths Falls. We've got a special weather statement in effect throughout the area as well. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Happening now in the morning markets, a sell-off for stocks after the latest report on U.S. inflation, which showed out-of-control price pressures in the American economy and the risk that interest rates are going to keep going up. Here's Mike Eppel from the business desk.
Markets are getting slammed here on this inflation data, which shows the headline inflation rate in the States at 8.2% for September. So even with 5 interest rate hikes already this year by the U.S. Central Bank, inflation is still above an 8 handle, and the U.S. core inflation rate is at 6.6%. That's the highest level in 40 years, not taking into account what's been going on in food prices and the energy costs. All of this has the market now repricing or pricing in 2 significant interest rate hikes by the U.S. Central Bank before the end of the year. 75 basis points next month, another 75 in December. Dow futures are tumbling 500 points as it looks like we're going to see a significant slide here at the opening bell this morning. And anything that is inflation adjusted is also being increased. The Social Security payments in the U.S. just announced here going up more than 8% for 2023, which is just going to raise costs for governments. At the City News Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
Now let's take a look at your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
We'll have showers moving in this morning, mild temperatures this morning, afternoon highs near 16 with rain for the afternoon. Still some showers lingering through the overnight as fog develops through Friday morning. So just be mindful on your morning commute. You may be encountering some poor visibility. For Friday, mainly sunny and then increasing cloud, highs near 15. For today, 16 degrees.
City News time is 10:02. The public inquiry has now begun. A federal commission has started the probe into the Trudeau government's use of the Emergencies Act to clear out the convoy protest in the capital last winter. The inquiry required by law when the Emergencies Act is invoked. And City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has been following along and joins us with more.
Justice Paul Rouleau is the commissioner of this inquiry, and kicking it off with an opening statement. He says while this is not a court of law, he will handle this inquiry like a judge, and the most vital goal is fact-finding.
Uncovering the truth is an important goal. When difficult events occur that impact the lives of Canadians, the public has a right to know what has happened.
Rouleau says while the inquiry will deal with a wide range of information and testimony, the focus is limited to the federal government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act and the impact that had. Rouleau says the biggest challenge for him is time. He says unlike other inquiries that face deadlines based on the work that has to be done, this one is legislated within the year, and compared to other inquiries of this size, that's very limited. Now, this is all happening 8 months after the convoy gridlocked the capital and blocked border crossings to protest COVID measures and the government. 65 witnesses are expected to testify, including the Prime Minister, leaders of the convoy, and police officials. The hearings will last 6 weeks, with a final report due in February. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And a candidate for Ottawa mayor has released a plan for what he calls economic growth in the city. Mark Sutcliffe says it's time to take a totally different approach at City Hall going forward when it comes to working with small business and to create a one-stop shop to navigate things like paperwork and permits.
Obviously, you have to respect bylaws. We have to respect the rules, but we've got to start saying yes more often. We've got to start treating some of these things as opportunities and create an environment where it's easier to do business in Ottawa, because otherwise people won't do business in Ottawa.
He'd also like to work with stakeholders to create a new recurring annual cultural event in Ottawa and a new cultural attraction that will bring people to Ottawa, somewhere along the lines of Blues Fest. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Has the government made it too easy to access MAID, medical assistance in dying? Has the government made it too easy to access MAID, medical assistance in dying? What do you think? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Not the cheeriest of topics, I know that, but a very important issue. It's one I've been following for a very long time, and it's making news, not just here in Canada, but all over the world. People, journalists in other countries are taking notice about what's happening in this country. They're asking what's going on in Canada. Why is the government making it so easy for someone to end their own life? So that's why I wanted to put it to you. Has the government made it too easy to access MAID, medical assistance in dying? 750-1310. 750-1310. Let me give you an example of some of the news stories about MAID recently, okay? About 10 days ago, the Winnipeg Free Press ran a story about a woman named Sathya Dara Kovac had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And she told the Winnipeg Free Press she didn't want to die. Even though her condition was worsening, she didn't want to die. Told the newspaper she had more to give, more life to live. And her friends say she could have lived several more years. But she said the system let her down because she couldn't get adequate home care. So she chose MAID, and she died earlier this month. She was 44 years old. Okay. This is what she wrote in part for her own obituary, as it appeared in the Winnipeg Free Press on October 8th. And I'm going to warn you, there's some adult language in this obituary, okay? Quote, living with ALS has not been easy. I wish there was more awareness, research, and hope. This shitty illness took my incredible mother, Barbara, Grandma Sophie, and Uncle Billy. Someone needs to cure this thing so cool people are not lost because of it. I tried my best. I'm still proud of myself for hanging in there and holding things down since my diagnosis in 2006. I might not have looked strong, but I know I was. Ultimately, it was not a genetic disease that took me out. It was a system. There are not enough supports and services promoting quality of life and independence for those who are not healthy and able-bodied. Look to unhealthy societal structures and government. There is desperate need for change. That is the sickness that is causing so much suffering. Vulnerable people need help to survive. I could have had more time if I had more help. End quote. I could have had more time if I had more help. But she didn't have the help she needed. But she was able to access MAID. No problem. Then there's another story. National Post, yesterday. Catherine Levesque reports for the National Post. Quote, the Quebec College of Physicians is being slammed by advocacy groups for suggesting that it be legal to euthanize severely ill newborns. Dr. Louis Waugh and the College of Physicians told the Commons Special Joint Committee of Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID, that his organization believes MAID can be appropriate for infants up to age 1, born with severe malformations and grave and severe syndromes, for which their prospective of survival is null, so to speak. Inclusion Canada said it was alarmed by his recommendation that Canada legalize euthanasia for infants with disabilities under the age of 1. Most families of children born with disabilities are told from the start their child will, in one way or another, not have a good quality of life, said Krista Carr, Inclusion Canada's vice president. Canada cannot begin killing babies when doctors predict there is no hope for them. Predictions are far too often based on discriminatory assumptions about life with a disability, she added. Alan Schadenberg, Executive Director, Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, said he does not see why doctors would agree to MAID for newborns if their chances of survival are next to nothing anyway. Why would you give a child a lethal dose? If the child is not going to survive, the child can be kept comfortable and die naturally. There's no reason for us to kill the child. There's no reason for us to do this at all, he said. I was in the Post yesterday. It set off a real firestorm. MAID for babies. Goodness gracious. It's hard to fathom that we're even discussing these things. About a month ago, this was in the Calgary Herald about a month ago, Bill Kaufman reporting for the Calgary Herald. Quote, the number of medically assisted deaths provided annually in Alberta and Canada has been steadily rising, with critics fearing that reflects a procedure increasingly open to abuse. In Alberta, the provision was provided 494 times last year, a 6.5% increase over 2020. 3 times more than the first full year of legalization in 2017. Across Canada, 10,064 assisted deaths last year, a 32% increase over 2020. Of those receiving MAID, 65% suffered from cancer, 80% received palliative care. Proponents of the provision and Alberta Health Services say those rising numbers largely reflect a natural growing awareness and acceptance of an option that offers a compassionate end to a life that is expected to be over in time. But others say it's a reflection of a system that's being liberalized and widened in scope too quickly, leaving it ripe for abuse. Listen to this. Calgary Herald. The increase in the overall percentage of people who die by MAID has come very quickly. It's very high even when compared to even the most liberal regimes in the world, Belgium and the Netherlands, said Trudeau Lemons, chair of health law and policy at the University of Toronto. We've passed them after just 6 years. Just one more. And then I'll get to some calls. CTV Montreal ran with this story just a couple of weeks ago. Lillian Roy, the reporter. CTV Montreal. A month ago, death wasn't on 66-year-old Jacques Comeau's mind. But now he doesn't know where else to turn. On Wednesday, he's meeting with a doctor to be assessed for MAID. Como, a retired art therapist from Montreal, is quadriplegic and uses a wheelchair. Like everyone, he's been through ups and downs, but through home care services, he says, he's lived a rich and happy life. Things changed over the summer, however, when his local health services center, CLSC, underwent changes. As a result, aspects of Comeau's care are different. And he says it's affected his quality of life. I'm stressed beyond belief, he says. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating regularly. The amount of pain I'm dealing with psychologically is the kind I've never dealt with. I became disabled as a young person. I got through that. This is 10 times worse. He says his efforts to negotiate a solution with CLSC have been fruitless. Depressed and desperate, there's only one path forward he can think of. I can accept the idea of death by saying, I've had a good life, he said. I've done everything. I've paid my taxes. I've contributed to society. But here I am. End quote. Here I am, he says. Here I am. Here I am. What are we doing? in this country. There were those of us who followed this story for a very long time. A very, very long time. Going back to the Sue Rodriguez case and the high court cases since then, who were concerned about what this could become if Canada went down this road and proper guardrails were not in place. And today I find myself, thinking my worries were justified and that some of my worst fears are coming true. These news stories are about people who are in desperate circumstances. They're not at the end of their lives. Their death is not foreseeable. But they are choosing MAID because they are being thoroughly let down by government. All levels of government, governments of all political stripes. The woman in Winnipeg with ALS needed better access to home care. If she had better home care, she'd be alive today. Babies? Terminally ill babies? Are we going to become a country that euthanizes babies? The man in the CTV story, he seems to have lived a nice life. Despite his challenges, now the Quebec healthcare system has abandoned him to the point where he feels he's better off dead. And about a month ago, Global News had a story about a veteran with PTSD. Veteran Affairs Canada agent asks, well, have you thought about MAID? Mercedes Stevenson had that story with Amanda Connolly. Look, being able to die on your own terms, that's one of the great debates of all time. That's why this has been so controversial. But it seems to me the government has created a regime that will allow people fairly easy and speedy access to an irreversible procedure. And some are choosing that path not because they want to die, but because the social welfare system, not their illness, the social welfare system is making it intolerable to live. And that's not what this was supposed to be about. This is not dignity. As the government made it too easy to access MAID, medical assistance in dying. This is the Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour, 750-1310. I'll be right back.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
At St. John Ambulance, we're all about community. We teach life-saving skills and provide community support through our volunteer services. All St. John Ambulance product sales and training registrations support these important services. Volunteer, donate, or enroll in a program today so we can continue to have an impact on our community. Visit sja.ca to learn more. At St. John Ambulance, we do more than save lives, we change lives.
I don't care what the law is. I will never be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like rot.
Peter, how does it feel to get paid for your work?
There are rumors freedom's coming for us all.
Freedom, you know that's all I want.
Chloe, careful. Real men would rather sell you across the river to America than let you go free.
Then I'll run.
I've run before. Maybe this time for good.
No! Just get her into a boat. No!
Chloe! Chloe, no!
Chloe Cooley's resistance led to Canada's first legislation limiting slavery. After 200 years, slavery was abolished in Canada in 1834.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Let's get to some calls here at 750-1310 on MAID. Is it too easy to get MAID in this country? Medical assistance in dying. Gloria, good morning. You're on City.
Yes, hello, Rob.
Hi, Gloria.
You make it sound, or at least others, make it sound as if it is so easy to do. It's not. I believe there were supposed to be precautions put. So it's not something you can just call up your doctor and say, hey, I've had it today, I'm feeling fed up, let's do MAID. Having had some personal experience in this, my spouse had a brain injury, and I was faced, and he had already faced the decision and already himself made the decision long before this happened, that he would do MAID. And upon reflection, it had to be the right course. I do understand how other people feel when they have loved ones who are in such a terrible state, cannot think for themselves, cannot do for themselves. They're a vegetable, basically. And I'm sorry to have to say that. It sounds cruel, it sounds hard, but it's a fact. And I think MAID was made for people like my spouse,
sure,
who is in that situation.
Yes, all well and good, but what if that wasn't the situation that your spouse was facing? What if your spouse was instead facing maybe years of a decent quality of life, but the fact is they couldn't be properly housed, or they didn't have adequate access to health care or home care, and to the point where they felt they'd be better off with MAID, because that's happening in this country. Are you okay with that, Gloria?
Well, I mean, people make their own decisions in everything in life.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
And
okay.
My husband and I, we came to a point in life where it was a decision he had to make, because he knew that there was not good news in the future. The future was not looking bright for him.
I understand that.
And I'm a healthy, quote, healthy person as far as I know. I'm not looking for trouble, but if I were in a similar situation, say a car accident or something like that,
right,
and it came to a point where my quality, as such as it's been, was diminished, it's a decision I would be making. I wouldn't be leaving it for a loved one to make that decision. I would want to make it myself. And then that way they have no burden of responsibility on their shoulders.
Okay. All right, Gloria, thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Okay. Dave in the West End. Dave, good morning. You're on City News. Dave? Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Dave. Is it too easy to access MAID?
Well, no. It's not as easy as it's being reported.
Really?
Really. But are people reaching the point, Rob, where they have to die? Maybe they don't want to die, but they have to because of the situation that they're in?
It seems to me that the decisions are being made by people because the government is failing them.
Exactly.
To house them, to properly house vulnerable
people.
To properly house vulnerable people, poor people, disabled people. One of the concerns expressed during this whole debate in the run-up to 2016, 2017, and the MAID regime was that it's going to be open season on disabled people, for example. Okay?
Rob,
and
can I be
vulnerable
very,
people.
very honest with you?
Okay, yeah.
I'm almost at a point where I'm going to assist the wife. She doesn't want to commit suicide, but I think she should.
Why?
Rob, what I witnessed yesterday is criminal. I should be able to call the police. Yesterday, I sent the wife to the hospital by ambulance at 3 o'clock in the morning. She was in such pain, she was screaming.
Right.
I got a call around 2:30 to come and get her. I went to the emergency. I'm not going to say which hospital. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. I went to the hospital yesterday to pick her up, thinking that she had been helped.
Right.
What I witnessed when I pulled up, there were at least 10, 12, 15 ambulances parked.
All lined up.
I thought, what, is there an emergency? When I went in, Rob, they're doing hallway medicine.
Yes.
There were at least 12 people in the hallway. That means the ambulance people have to stay with them.
Yeah.
And as I walked down the hall, my wife was way down at the end. She saw me coming. She lifted both arms up in the air and started to cry. And when I got there, Rob, she said, "Get me out of here."
Right.
Get me out of here.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, that's what I'm here for, hon.
Right.
Don't worry." Everything.
Terrible.
Rob.
Right.
Now, I'll shorten it by saying when I got her home, I wish somebody would come and witness what I'm saying, because her arm, I left it there. I'm afraid to take it off. We're going to the doctor tomorrow, and I'm leaving this thing on. But her body was covered with these stickers that they did some kind of tests, I'm sure. Like, I had to pull them off last night, and each one I pulled off.
Yes. So because
they left her.
I understand this, Dave. So to come, and it's very emotional for a lot of people. I understand this. It's this idea that these conditions, whether it's, for you, it's your wife at the hospital. For some people, it's their housing situation, or they make changes to home care. Somebody's in a wheelchair. They can't get any home care. This is driving people who would otherwise have some quality of life to say, you know what, it's just not worth it anymore.
Exactly.
The government is not here for me to support me anymore. That's not what made this. That's not what made this.
And here we are talking about bicycle paths.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Dave. All the best to you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah. Very emotional topic. I understand for a lot of people. But this is the state that we're in right now. This is why people are asking, what are they doing in Canada with MAID? And let's not do that here. Rob Snow Show, City News.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Things like the convoy really showed a lot of separation between municipal parties and even federal, provincial lines of communication. So we want to see a lot more responsibility taken on funds that really affect people in the city, as well as probably seeing increases in housing and industrial space.
Hi, I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Thursday, October 13th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 15 degrees. It's also 15 degrees in Smith Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. Ontarians aged 12 and older will be eligible to get Pfizer's bivalent COVID-19 booster starting next Monday. The province says appointments can now be booked through the COVID-19 vaccination portal or by phone. On November 1st, also, flu shots will be made available through healthcare providers, public health units and pharmacies. Flu shots can be safely given at the same time or at any time before or after taking the COVID-19 vaccine. The public inquiry into the federal government's unprecedented use of the Emergencies Act in February is now underway. Officials from all levels of government in the capital, organizers of the convoy, and police officers are among the 65 witnesses expected to be called to testify at the 6-week-long inquiry. The feds invoked the act for the first time ever in February amid border blockades and occupation of downtown Ottawa by protesters demonstrating against COVID-19 vaccine mandates and lockdowns. I am Damilola Unime. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Is it too easy to access MAID, medical assistance in dying? I mean, the whole debate about MAID, doctor-assisted suicide, euthanasia, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's been part of the public dialogue for basically my entire adult life. I'm sure many of you remember the Sue Rodriguez case of the early 1990s. Sue Rodriguez had ALS. And at the time in Canada, it was illegal to have a doctor to help you end your own life. And she challenged that in the courts, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and she lost in September of 93. Supreme Court of Canada ruled at the time, Section 241B of the Criminal Code did not violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That is the section that dealt with counseling or aiding suicide. Eventually, Sue Rodriguez did end her own life with the help of an anonymous doctor. To this day, an anonymous doctor. And the presence, in the presence of Sven Robinson, championed her cause, the NDP MP at the time. And it stayed that way until a case known as Carter came along. And I may give you a few more details as we make our way through the show on that case. But Garth is in Nepeans, called in 750-1310, Talkback Hour. MAID is the topic. Is it too easy to access MAID in Canada? Garth.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi.
It's going to be getting easier. The government is considering adding more categories, including mental health issues, to the eligibility.
Yeah. In 6 months from now.
Yes, correct. So it's opening up an even larger population to apply. I'm a Canadian Navy veteran. I received a letter in the mail last week from Stats Canada saying I was chosen to participate in a survey on behalf of Veterans Affairs to health services being provided to veterans. And I followed the story of the gentleman that
had PTSD.
Who was looking for services from Veterans Affairs and was offered
MAID
that
instead.
option. Yes.
Yeah.
And I was just taken aback by that. I thought that was quite insensitive.
And he didn't ask about it.
That's right.
It came unsolicited
as an option.
Right.
And so, so that there was no other health services to be offered. Before that, I thought was. Really not shocking, but unbelievable.
Yeah. So is it too easy? Too permissive?
It's going to be. Like I say, once they start to add more categories to it, you'll see that the number of applications and then the number of procedures will probably go way up.
Okay. All right. Up 32% in 2 years. Okay, Garth, thank you. Thank you. Deb, Ottawa, you're on City News.
Yeah, Rob, I hope I don't hit my off button again. That guy is really smart. That's what I wanted to talk about. You know the homeless people that are on the street that, they can't hold down jobs, they can't pay for rent. And then you've got the druggies down on the market where they're giving them Maloxin. 23 minutes later, they're looking for their next hit. It's going to spread. Do you know what I mean?
MAID is going to
Yeah,
spread.
because what we're experiencing right now is our hospitals can't handle anybody to go in, long waiting lists, and they can't seem to take care of the seniors.
It seems that people are falling, thank you for your call, Deb. People are falling through the cracks of the social welfare system to such an extent that they're inquiring about it. Like the woman who was from Winnipeg, lived in Winnipeg. Luke in Wendover. Luke, you're on City News. Luke. Sorry, Luke, go ahead.
How are you, Rob?
I'm good. Sir, thank you.
Well, that's quite the topic this morning. I actually...
heavy-duty stuff, man. Heavy-duty stuff, yeah.
What's that?
It's heavy-duty stuff.
It is. So, my Gigi out west in British Columbia has been in and out of the hospital for the past month. Old age thing. And last time he went back to the hospital, he had 90% of his lungs filled with fluids. And the doctor, instead of treating him for that, because of his age, he's 86 years old, mentioned that to the family. So the four sisters, and my bubba, my grandma, had to make that weird decision to go with it or not, because he couldn't make that decision. Now, it blows my mind and it disgusts me that was one of the options instead of trying to treat him like a human being.
Right. So you think it is going too far? It is becoming too easy to access this procedure.
Well, if we would have approached the doctor about it, that would have been one thing.
Right.
The best interest of our Gigi. But that wasn't the case. It's the doctor that approached the family.
Right.
Okay. It breaks my heart how they think they could bring that up just like that.
Yeah.
It's treat the person with respect, like a human being. Let us bring it up to you.
Okay.
Don't bring it up to us.
All right, Luke. Thank you. Bit of a choppy connection there, but thank you. Paul is in the market. Paul.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah. Hi, Paul.
This topic is
I can't understand why the argument back and forth is, since COVID, all we seem to be doing is being retaliatory. Last I checked, foreseeable death. Who determines the length of time? Because last I checked, it is the last thing every single one of us does is die.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So who chooses is nobody's business but that individuals. And as for what you were referring to, the deformed children and whatnot, my goodness, that's bad. That is between the parents and the doctors. The same thing as getting a shot. The government wants us to jump through hoops
what if people are opting for MAID because they feel abandoned by their government, by their society, because their death is not foreseeable, but rather they're not properly housed.
Well, maybe
they're not getting appropriate health care.
Meet their maker than sleep on the street.
Yeah, but you're missing the point. In the original law, which has been amended since then, but in the original law, this was supposed to be about death that was reasonably foreseeable.
Yes, but
reasonably
determined by what time? We're all going to die.
Okay. Don't yell at me, please.
I'm sorry.
I'm not one of your children. Don't yell at me. I'm not one of your children.
Look at what the hospital. Look at what Rob Ford is doing to the seniors. As far as I'm concerned, he's extorting them to put them somewhere else so he can save a few bucks. So we're damned if we do. We do if we're damned if we don't.
Okay.
It should be our own. It's nobody's business but our own.
Okay. But what if the decision is made? Let's say somebody is in one of these long-term care homes, living in what you would consider to be deplorable conditions, Paul, warehoused or whatever you want to call it, right? But they may have years left to live of a decent quality of life if they were adequately housed. But instead, those people are opting for MAID. Is that appropriate?
Dream. Show me.
Show you. I've read you 4 news stories that have been in the news in the last month, Paul. This is not made up. This is not fake news. This is happening all the time. A woman in Winnipeg, 44 years old, had ALS and said, "I don't want to die, but the system has let me down, so I may as well go out." Is that what this was supposed to be about?
Her and her maker.
Oh, okay.
You know,
all right.
The government is making us jump through enough hoops for whatever else we want to do. Now we got to ask the government's permission to die. I mean, come on. Do they really want our tax dollars that bad?
All right, Paul. Thank you.
Do they really want to make it? That's all they want to do is let people suffer.
All right. We don't agree on this topic at all, Paul. Thank you. Gordon in Nepean, you're on City News. Gordon.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this matter to the public's attention, Rob. I think it's long overdue. I had been my mother's caregiver, and that was before assisted suicide. I had learned that if she had the ability to smile, that was quality of life, and life is worth living. I have recently, within the last few years, had a sister-in-law who was vulnerable, always a vulnerable girl.
Okay.
And she went into hospital with trouble with her lungs. And in my opinion, she was pressured and talked into assisted suicide.
Really?
I had gone to visit her, and I think a doctor did appreciate my advice to Christine that, if you're still able to smile, you're still able to converse and enjoy yourself, if that day comes, Christine, and you want to change your mind, you speak up and don't die. And I'm not sure anybody had tried to speak to her in that way until me. Now, she was talked into it by being told that if she didn't accept it, her lungs could eventually give out, and it would be a very, very painful death for her. Well, as it turned out, though I was not there when the assisted suicide was done, an uncle who was a doctor was there, and apparently the whole thing had been botched, and she died in pain anyhow.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I just think that we have gone
too far.
Not just making it too easy, Rob. I think we have got to the point where people they're trying to convince people to do it. And that's
pressuring people. Pressuring people. There have been stories of that.
And life really is sacred, and I think our government, our healthcare systems are letting us down. And, you know, I've never really been known as a conservative, but God bless the Conservatives, the only party that has stood up in the House of Commons to at least question this. And
the conservative position is there should at least, if you're going to go down this road, you have to have conscience rights. You know, if I'm a doctor and it's my firmly held belief that this is wrong or whatnot, that I should have the right to refuse to perform that procedure and refer the person somewhere else. And
absolutely,
that was defeated in the House of Commons. Okay, thank you, Gordon. I got to run. Thank you. 750-1310. I'll be back right after this. More phone lines available. 3 lines there for you. 750-1310. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Your mouth can do a lot of amazing things. And your mouth can save a life.
Hi, I'm Tom Wong. I'm just one of close to 1,000 Canadians in search of a stem cell match. We need your help.
A simple swab is all you need to register on the National Stem Cell Database. You could be the one to save a life. Find the hero in you.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Patini, the host of the RTV quiz show, the hottest show on television. It's the hilarious quiz show where you, the viewers, play for valuable non-existent prizes. It's got great trivia, fun facts, and a lot of laughs, all blended together in a perfect cocktail of edutainment. So join us Wednesdays at 7:30 right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Talking about MAID, medical assistance in dying. becoming too easy to access. Mentioned the Rodriguez case, Sue Rodriguez. I mean, that was the case. Sue Rodriguez lost that case. And that's the way it stayed until another Supreme Court case known as Carter came along. It was Carter v. Canada. Carter is Lee Carter. Her mother, Kay Carter, wanted to die with dignity. So Lee Carter took her mother to Switzerland, where she had a doctor-assisted suicide at a private clinic. And Lee Carter was joined by another woman by the name of Gloria Taylor, who had ALS. And together they challenged, once again, the law that prohibited medical assistance in dying, and this goes back to 2015. Gloria Taylor said she didn't want to live in a bedridden state, stripped of dignity and independence, and the court heard the case and focused in on two parts of the charter. Section 7, the famous Section 7 of the Charter of Rights. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, security of the person, right not to be deprived thereof, in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. And Section 15, which is about equality rights. Every individual is equal before and under the law, has the right to the equal protection benefit of the law without discrimination. And the argument basically was, look, an able-bodied person wouldn't even have to fight for the right to end their own life because they can just do it. But someone with a debilitating illness, they can't do that. And that violates the right to be treated equally under the law and have the equal benefit of the law. And as for Section 7, some of you might be thinking the right to life, but these people want to end their lives. How can they say it violates my right to life by denying me the right to end my life on my own terms? The case was made that because of the ban on physician-assisted dying, some people take their lives prematurely because they worry that they won't be able to later. They'll be in such a debilitated state, and that violates their right to life. I know, seems counterintuitive, but that was the argument in the Carter case, and those were the winning arguments. And the ban on doctor-assisted suicide was ruled unconstitutional. And it gave Parliament a year to write a new law, and it did. It was C-14. And there were all kinds of things that were in there, but two of them that were in there. Your death had to be reasonably foreseeable, first of all. And there was a 10-day cooling off period. You didn't go in on Monday and it happened on Tuesday. You went in on Monday and then there was like a period of reflection. Like, do you really want to go through with this? But the law was appealed in Quebec. The law was appealed in Quebec, and that was a key turning point in this. Jean Truchon and Nicole Gladue, both severely handicapped. And they challenged this law because the original law said your death had to be reasonably foreseeable. And they applied for MAID, but they were denied because their death was not reasonably foreseeable. So they fought it in Quebec, and they won. And the judge in Quebec said denying those two individuals the right to medically assisted dying, again, violated Section 7 and Section 15 of the Charter under the new law. It said, back to you, Parliament, go write another law. And it amended the law, and it repealed this requirement that a person's death be reasonably foreseeable. And it removed the 10-day reflection period as well. And it waived the requirement to provide final consent one last time. And one of the callers, March 17th of next year, Canadians whose only medical condition is mental illness, who would otherwise meet all the other eligibility criteria, will become eligible for MAID. And some are just worried, we're talking about, anxiety, depression, PTSD, these kinds of things. In 7 years, this country will have gone from a total ban on doctor-assisted suicide to being the most accommodative regime in the world for this. And that is unsettling for some. Anne in Ottawa. Anne, you're on City News.
Oh, yes, good morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I've been a nursing aide in a palliative care hospital. This was in the 70s, and also a long-term care home in Ottawa. And I just think that people have to stop looking towards the government to supply everything for them.
Okay.
That's the problem. There's just too many people now that need help, that, you know, we have to look at other alternatives. Years ago, we didn't have any of that stuff, any home care or anything.
Well, what if the only, but people feel that their only alternative is death? Yeah.
Well, I've seen both my parents die. When my mother had a stroke, she couldn't talk. She couldn't talk. She had a stroke, but she was, you know, making a noise her last day she was alive. And my father had pancreatic cancer, which is one of the most painful, and I think what they did was they just gave him too much morphine to help him along the way.
Sure.
So I'm just saying that they're always against, the government should really not have anything to do with that issue. It's between, you know, you, your family, and God. So I know a lot of things happen. Everybody makes mistakes. So I just think that they have to look at the health care now with all the people who are unvaccinated, are getting COVID and ending up in the hospitals. They just don't have enough people to go around.
Okay.
Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Paul in Orleans. Paul.
Hi, yeah, I think this is an incredibly important topic at this time. I mean, our society and our culture as a whole has been moving further from respect for life, you know, as time goes by. I mean, you can see it all over the place with laws with abortion, and then with certain medical procedures which you know, are intended to help the well-being of people, but increase their mental health difficulties, increase rate of suicide as time goes on. We're seeing that increasing, and you know, I think it's because of a culture that we are now experiencing where there, you know, there's no respect for life anymore. There's no love for the person, and you know, that's something I would like to see change. I would like to see people being educated on the value and the dignity of the human soul and of the human person.
Right.
And you know, that's one of the reasons that I've decided, you know, I'm gonna take some kind of positive action. You know, I'm running for Catholic School Board here in Orleans. You know, if you like what I'm talking about, you know.
Oh yeah. You're supposed to identify yourself as a candidate before you jump on the radio there. But nevertheless, but I understand your point, and that's the case that so many are making now as we read these stories. Are we devaluing human life by making doctor-assisted suicide too easy to obtain? Because increasingly we're reading stories, we're seeing stories in the news media that people are opting for MAID, not because death is foreseeable, but rather because the government is just failing at providing adequate social services, whether that's housing or whether that's health care. And thank you all for listening to the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour for today. We will be back right after the 11 o'clock news. We will return our attention to this municipal election campaign with a particular focus on the race for mayor, McKenney, Sutcliffe, and their fiscal plans with Post-Media columnist Randall Denley here on City News.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
20 bucks. Hi, I'm Maggie. Come into my kitchen. When you're using salt in a recipe, check for saltiness. Not all salts are equal. A fine grain salt is a lot more salty than a large grain salt because that takes longer to get into the food. Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It is Thursday, October 13th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, light rain, 15 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The public inquiry has now begun. A federal commission has started the probe into the Trudeau government's use of the Emergencies Act to clear out the convoy protests in the capital last winter. The inquiry is required by law when the Emergencies Act is invoked. City News Parliament's Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
Justice Paul Rouleau is the commissioner of this inquiry, and kicking it off with an opening statement. He says while this is not a court of law, he will handle this inquiry like a judge, and the most vital goal is fact-finding.
Uncovering the truth is an important goal. When difficult events occur that impact the lives of Canadians, the public has a right to know what has happened.
Rouleau says while the inquiry will deal with a wide range of information and testimony, the focus is limited to the federal government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act and the impact that had. Rouleau says the biggest challenge for him is time. He says unlike other inquiries that face deadlines based on the work that has to be done, this one is legislated within the year, and compared to other inquiries of this size, that's very limited. Now, this is all happening 8 months after the convoy gridlocked the capital and blocked border crossings to protest COVID measures and the government. 65 witnesses are expected to testify, including the Prime Minister, leaders of the convoy, and police officials. The hearings will last 6 weeks, with a final report due in February. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
An Ottawa mayoral candidate, Mark Sutcliffe, has released his economic growth plan for the city if he is elected mayor. Sutcliffe tells City News it's time to take a completely different approach at City Hall by creating a conducive environment for small businesses and also to create a one-stop shop to navigate paperwork and permits. Ottawa residents will also have a new annual cultural event in the city, as well as a new attraction that will bring more visitors to the city if Mark Sutcliffe gets the top job. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
Another mild day here, but keep the umbrella handy. We have some scattered showers this morning and then some steadier rain as we move through the middle of the day. 10 to 20 millimeters for Ottawa and Smiths Falls. Mainly sunny with increasing cloud Friday, highs near 15. For today, the daytime high very warm, 16 degrees.
City News time is 11:02. The province is expanding eligibility for the bivalent COVID-19 shot as we prepare for respiratory illness season. And soon the flu shot will also be available for the general public. City News reporter Laura Carney has the story.
Starting Monday, everyone aged 12 and older will be eligible to get a COVID-19 bivalent booster in this province. Appointments can be booked starting today through the provincial portal. The province expanding the age following Health Canada's approval of the Pfizer bivalent vaccine. Previously, only people 18 and older were eligible for the Moderna bivalent shot. It is recommended you wait 6 months between doses, but the province says you can get it as early as 3 months after your last shot. The health minister says getting vaccinated remains the best defense against the flu and COVID-19. The province also announcing that the flu shot will be available to the general public starting November 1st. You can get both the flu shot and COVID-19 vaccine at the same time. Laura Carney, City News.
City News time 11:03. An immigration lawyer in Australia says tennis star Novak Djokovic which will likely be successful if he applies for a visa to enter Australia for the season opening tennis major next year, despite his high-profile deportation in January. Djokovic has won 9 Australian Open championships among his 21 major titles. But he wasn't allowed to defend his title this year after a 10-day legal saga over his COVID-19 vaccination status that culminated with his visa being revoked. That means he could face an exclusion period for up to 3 years, but border officials have said his 3-year ban can be waived. I am Damilola Unime, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Here with Post-Media columnist and author Randall Denley. Welcome back. Good morning, Randall Denley.
Morning, Rob.
Writing for the Ottawa Citizen today about the fiscal plans of the two frontrunners. According to the polls, the two frontrunners being Sutcliffe and McKenney in this race for mayor. And you say anyone who wants to cast an informed ballot should really read the fiscal plans of both of these candidates. Why do you say that?
Well, I think that's essential. I mean, it's our tax dollars at stake, Mark. So you want to know what you're really going to get. And if you don't dig any deeper, then say, oh, more cycling paths, that sounds good. More transit, that sounds good. Or in Sutcliffe's case, hey, lower taxes, that sounds good. You really don't understand what they're trying to accomplish and what it costs. And the big focus I have in this column is candidate McKenney's plan and what some of those costs are, and they're significant.
Okay. Why don't you outline them for us as you see it?
Yeah, the biggest promise that McKenney made is on transit, $288 million over 4 years. That would increase the volume of bus transit by 20%, would freeze transit fares, and it would make transit free for those 17 and under. I mean, that all sounds great, I guess, but what is the problem we have with transit? The problem is that too few people are riding it, and it's not going in places where, in regard to the bus, it's not going in places where people really need it to go. So I think, those are the problems that need to be addressed. But if you don't have enough customers, adding more service isn't going to help. And if you don't have enough money, and we're talking an $85 million deficit this year on the transit budget, cutting revenue isn't going to help. So I don't understand that policy as something that's really going to benefit people. And I think they need to think carefully about whether that's how they want their money spent. The one that really jumps out at me, though, Mark, and I think we've talked about this before, is the $250 million bicycle path plan. That is Catherine McKinney's second largest spending commitment, more than affordable housing, more than climate change. So it must be enormously important. And the idea is, hey, why don't we take 25 years worth of bike construction, and we'll do it all in 4 years, assuming that could even be done. It's a great idea, I guess, except that when you look at the cost, it comes to $375 million. That's how much would be collected. So $125 million will go to interest.
Okay.
It wouldn't go to bike paths.
Right.
Now, you can argue, as the McKinney campaign does, that, well, yeah, but construction inflation and all that kind of stuff.
We'd spend that anyway.
We'd spend it anyway. Yeah. But, I would personally be perfectly happy to see the bike construction level stuck at $15 million a year for the next 25 years and not pay any interest. It's to me, Mark, it's a case of setting priorities. Like, who out there?
It's Rob, Randall. You keep calling me Mark, but it's Rob.
Did I do that?
Yeah, that's okay.
You radio guys are all the same.
I know.
And why aren't you running for mayor?
For some reason, you're like the third person who has done that in the last week and a half or something. So I don't know. There must be something to it.
You're morphing into one person. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yes. So on this. I want to know is how could this, it's $250 million. It's the number one thing people bring up about Catherine McKenney's plan for bike lanes. The interest, according to you, it would bring the total cost to $375 million. How can you make the claim that that's cost neutral?
Well, that goes back to the will it cost us the same over 25 years. I would rather pay for it over 25 years, I guess, if it does, rather than say, hey, let's take out a mortgage on bike paths and pay for it all at once. I think you just have to step back from that, Rob, and say, what is this the second most important thing in the city of Ottawa? Expanding bike paths?
Yeah.
I just don't see it as being even the top 10 priority for most people.
Well, I've described it this way. $250 million falls from the sky onto the lap of the mayor, and they can spend it on whatever need they feel is most pressing in the city. Is it bike paths, or is it something else? Is it more affordable housing, for example? I mean, this is more than the annual budget for Ottawa community housing, for crying out.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a huge sum of money. But, okay, so that's the McKinney plan, and more details, again, and you encourage people to read them. What about the Sutcliffe fiscal plan?
Remarkably modest in comparison. He has $25 million in priority spending. $10 million of that is for road repair, snow clearing, repair of sidewalks, of bike lanes, fixing up what we've already got. In other words, not expanding it. That's the biggest piece of his $25 million. He builds that into the first year. It's in the budget. We keep spending more than we would have spent every year under the Sutcliffe plan. That's not a big blow in terms of spending. And say, well, how is he going to pay for it? And there's been quite a bit of back and forth this week, as you know, Rob, about the Sutcliffe plan and the McKinney plan between those two candidates. But McKinney's take is that, well, these are cuts, and apparently they would decimate city services. Could be cuts to anything.
Yeah.
Ambulance, maybe. Not that he said that, but let's just speculate. What he's actually talking about is not filling 100 jobs that are currently vacant and eliminating another 100 jobs through attrition over time, as well as spending less on consulting. The city spends millions on consulting.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's always an amazing thing to me. You hire people who are supposed to be experts in their subject. You're paying them a salary. But you want any real work done or an opinion you're going to pay attention to, better hire a consultant, who's very often someone who used to work for the city, but now they don't. So I think he's looking in the right areas to make some savings. And the claim that in a multi-billion-dollar budget there's nothing to be cut, nothing. Yeah. That is typical of the way the left thinks.
Well, I had
it only gets bigger and never gets smaller.
I had Councillor McKinney on the show. Trying to think, when was that? Monday? No, Tuesday, I guess. Tuesday. Yeah, Monday was holiday. On this word decimate, that came up during our conversation. Go ahead.
That's what I'm concerned about. What would be cut? There's, up to $80 million in cuts would further decimate our city services. If people think they can't get through to 311 today, if they can't get their kids in swim lessons, to a library on Sunday, a further $80 million in cuts would have a significant impact on people who count on public services.
I mean, decimate. Decimate. Okay, so it's a $4 billion operating budget. When you put in the capital budget, it's $5 billion a year this city spends. A huge sum of money. $80 million is like 1.6%.
Yeah, that's right. He's not even talking about $80 million. He's talking about 35 to 60. So a little bit of exaggeration in all that claim. And the other point that Sutcliffe has been making this week, which I think resonates with me anyways, is Catherine McKinney's plan relies on taking $90 million out of reserves in the first 2 years. There's no plan to put the money back. It's just gone. Well, reserves are for spending. It seems to be the attitude of the McKinney campaign. Most city reserves are actually earmarked for something in particular, and there's a relatively small reserve that's set aside for emergencies. Big windstorm, something bad happens, the pandemic hits, we got some reserves.
Yeah.
But why would you take out money from reserves for any of the things that are identified in the McKinney plan? I'm not convinced that makes sense. And interesting to note, I thought that the McKinney campaign congratulates itself because former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page praises it for its transparency, and he's quite right. It's a well laid out plan. You can read that and see what McKinney intends to do with your money. But Cyclist campaign reached out to Page and said, well, what do you think about ours? And his take is, well, it's a lot of inflation, a lot of uncertainty. That's a time for prudence and fiscal responsibility. Cyclist financial plan to hold the line on taxes and look for efficiencies is a fiscally responsible approach, he says. I would certainly agree with that. And I think to me, that ought to be the ballot question in this election. Do you want more big spending on things that might be nice to have? Or do you want a much more cautious approach because we're in uncertain times? Is this really when you want to spend up your reserves?
So, Randall, I said this morning, this is the most competitive mayor's race that I can remember, at least since amalgamation. Maybe the amalgamation election that Bob Chiarelli won. You remember that race?
Yeah.
Right. It's a real race, right?
It's very
interesting.
Be close. It's quite a novelty for us, Rob. I think after, several Watson coronations, so the race that involved O'Brien, Alex Munter, and Bob Chiarelli was certainly an interesting one, too, and in some ways, I think, similar to this one, although O'Brien and Mark Sutcliffe are two totally different guys. But Alex Munter was a very strong, thoughtful left-wing candidate.
Yeah.
Bob Chiarelli was the mayor at the time, and, didn't turn out well for either of them. We know it didn't turn out that well for the citizens either once Mr. O'Brien got in, although he had some good ideas. But I think it's a big deal. There's a debate tonight that people will probably want to tune into on television. And I think people really need to spend some time thinking about this because it's going to set the tone for the next 4 years. And whoever we elect on the 24th, once you're the incumbent mayor, as we know with the current mayor, very hard to get that person out. So I think we need to spend quite a bit of time trying to get this one right because it really will matter.
Okay. Thank you, Randall Denley. Great column.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
bye-bye. Yeah, in the paper, in the Citizen, a long-time City Hall columnist for the Citizen. That's Randall Denley. This is the Rob Snow Show. We'll look at that American inflation number that came out today, and it was stronger than what was expected, and it all but assures that the U.S. Federal Reserve is going to keep raising interest rates, which will set the tone all over the world, really, for interest rates. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Clubs, leagues, and courts in every province and territory across Canada, squash is the sport for wall-to-wall fun, fitness, and friendship. From coast to coast to coast. Learn to play, and you'll want to do it every day. Squash. Play inside the box.
Giovanni! Fire! The neighbor's farm is on fire. It's almost to the road. It's heading for us.
Help me get the animals out of the barn.
The fire's getting closer.
I'm on the horse.
The house is burning.
Get out to the river. Get up.
Can't leave everything. Careful. Don't fall.
Come on. We have to hurry.
There's the river. We're going to make it. I can't swim.
Yes, you can.
Hurry, hurry.
You must get in.
I can't.
Watch out for sparks.
His hair's on fire.
Keep the hair wet.
In May 1870, fires raged along the Saguenay River for more than 150 kilometers, destroying land and lives. One family survived by dousing themselves all night against the searing heat. One family, among the thousands whose resourcefulness and courage shaped the character of this land.
Hi, I'm Sahai from The Wiggles, and this is my new book, Something in Common. Join me on an adventure as a camp counselor helping some amazing children make friends and share what family means to them. I wrote this book with my friends at Children's Aid Foundation of Canada to help children who might feel lonely or like they don't belong. Not everyone has the same type of family, but we all have something in common. Download Something in Common for free.
The houseless crisis, because it really is a crisis down here on Rideau Street. There is not enough shelters for men especially, and we need to be helping our most vulnerable.
Join me for Season 3 of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. Whew, that was a lot. I think I need a nap.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
The stock markets have been open for regular trading for about 2 hours now, and it's just been an incredibly wild ride. The U.S. inflation report, the inflation rate, consumer price index, was released at 8:30. It was hotter than expected, and there are lots of worries about the core inflation rate. And boom, the stock market went way down. And here we are. It's less than 2 hours since the opening bell, and now the stock market is up, as measured by the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, and our own TSX is up as well by about 245 points. So what the heck is going on? Most importantly, with that inflation number this morning, let's welcome back Sal Guadiari is back with us now. He is Director and Senior Economist, BMO Capital Markets. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
What did you make of the inflation rate as released by the United States this morning, in the United States this morning?
Well, it's just another pretty horrible price report out of the U.S. This is the second straight month now that markets have been surprised on the upside by the core measure of inflation, the underlying measure. And, I mean, the sense is that there's no let-up in the price pressures that we're seeing in the U.S. economy, at least as measured by some of the official measures, such as the CPI. So, and once you strip out food and energy, that core price is still going up 0.6%. For a second straight month, and now the yearly rate's at a fresh 40-year high of 6.6%. So, there are some indications that rents might start to ease off a little bit. Apartment rents are starting to moderate, and we are seeing some tentative signs of easing in the labor market there. Job openings have fallen quite sharply. But I think what this report is telling us is it's just going to take a long time before we see a significant easing in underlying price pressures. So rent growth, services prices, wages, all of that needs to subside over the next few months to get those core rates of inflation down soon enough to prevent the Fed from continuing to ramp up its tightening cycle. I mean, I think this report all but locks in a fourth straight 75 basis point rate increase from the Fed. Just to put that in perspective, the last time the Fed moved rates by 75 basis points was in 1994, and it did just once. Wow. Now it's already moved 3 times by that amount. Looks set to move a 4th time, and who knows if, unless we see some subsiding of underlying inflation pressures, we could see another jumbo rate hike at the end of the year as well.
And all told, how many times, going back to the beginning of this now tightening cycle, has the Fed raised interest rates? Is it 3 times already, or?
Well, five times already.
5 times
a total of 300 basis points.
Right. Okay.
And this is the most aggressive Fed tightening cycle since the 1980s. So I guess no coincidence. We have 4-decade high inflation and the most aggressive Fed tightening in 4 decades. And it's not just the fact that inflation is staying high. What really worries the Fed is that stubbornness in inflation will start affecting expectations, and that will trigger a so-called wage price spiral that will just keep inflation higher for much longer and make the Fed's job of controlling inflation exponentially harder and harder to do without basically causing at least a standard recession. Right now, the general sense is, yes, the Fed, has this somewhat under control because inflation expectations are remaining fairly subdued. And if that's the case, we might get by, not with a soft landing, but with a shallow or mild economic downturn. And that's our base case forecast.
Okay.
But
So we
I think
know
the risk is building. We could see something worse if the Fed needs to continue to raise rates aggressively.
Okay. So traditionally, there's been a lag. It's not as though these interest rate hikes take effect immediately. I've been told in the past by economists in your shop, for example, 6 months before you start even seeing an appreciable decline or effect from either an interest rate hike or an interest rate cut. Five interest rate hikes, and we still have a number like 6.6%. So is it starting to work, this tightening cycle?
Well, it depends what you mean by starting to work. I think, there is a sense there's long and variable lags with the response of the economy and inflation to changes in interest rates. That's pretty clear. And we're starting to see, 6 months later, since the start of this tightening cycle, some fraying in inflation pressure. So the apartment rents are starting to slip. House prices are falling. We saw a big drop in job vacancies. In the U.S., the rate of employment growth is starting to slow as well. So we're starting to see some dividends of the Fed's aggressive policy tightening. But again, I think what this report is telling us is it's going to take a while. Even though inflation looks to have peaked, it's going to take a while to get inflation down to levels that the Fed is much more comfortable with, that it can, number one, stop tightening policy, or first slow the rate of tightening, then stop tightening policy, so it can move to the sidelines. Now, the Fed is aware that there are lags in policy, so at some point over the next few months, I believe it will stop raising rates and just sit back and see, the impact on inflation and the economy of its actions. But we're still a ways off from there. Probably, it looks like the Fed's going to keep raising rates until early next year.
Okay. Is it any better in Canada? What's the situation here compared to the U.S.?
It is better, but again, that's just to put it in perspective, yes, our inflation rate is a little more than a percentage point lower than in the U.S. Our wage growth is a little slower than in the U.S. We are seeing clear signs of loosening in our labor market. We did have those three consecutive employment declines until some rebound in September. So, yes, inflation pressures appear to be less intense in Canada than in the U.S., and as a result, we do expect the Bank of Canada to end its tightening cycle well below that in the U.S. So we do expect the Bank of Canada to move rates up another 75 basis points by the end of this year, but that's half of what we anticipate for further Fed tightening. The one wrinkle here, though, is the higher inflation is in the U.S., the more the Fed has to aggressively tighten policy, the more downward pressure we're seeing on the Canadian dollar, as we saw this morning, down another half cent to 72 cents U.S., a two-year low. That incrementally puts a little pressure on the Bank of Canada to raise rates a little more aggressively because that's an inflationary impact. I mean, it explains why we're seeing food costs rising so dramatically in Canada.
Yeah, it's not a great scenario, right? To have inflation at whatever it is in this country, 7%, I think was the last reading, right? And to have your currency at 72 cents. It's kind of like a double whammy.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, though. I mean, the weaker currency, it's providing some support to our economy, and therefore, in some ways, reduces the risk of a recession, but at the same time, it's heightening inflation pressures, meaning we could end up with higher interest rates and ultimately a deeper recession.
But sadly, demand in the global economy is not strong right now, according to the IMF, right? So.
We're weakening, yeah. I mean, the economy was doing great through the first half of this year, but the monthly data, especially on GDP and retail sales, show a pretty abrupt slowdown for consumers, for the economy, and we expect very little growth in the second half of this year. And then, unfortunately, we likely will see the economy contract at least modestly in the first half of next year.
Okay. Thank you, Sal Guadiari.
Okay, take care.
Really nice. Yep. Sal Guadiari was with BMO Capital Markets, director and senior economist there. But the markets are up today, despite that inflation report. And just on our dollar, in case you're curious, it's 72.41 cents U.S., and crude oil is at $88 right now. News is next. And then the world with Professor Elliot Tepper on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
I think our schools need better resources. Teachers need to be paid better. I think that there should be programs for Black people that prioritize our needs, and I think the curriculum needs to be adjusted to reflect all peoples, not just one kind of person. And they should also invest a lot of money in programs, after-school programs that are not like relevant in 1990, but are relevant today.
Hi, I'm Meg from AIM Fitness, and I'm here with my buddy Fit Finley. Join us every week for Fit Over 50. We'll take you through some low-impact and high-intensity workouts designed to improve your strength and your balance. All you'll need is a resistance band, some light hand weights, and also your water bottle and a sturdy chair. Tune in right here on Rogers TV and let us be part of your weekly routine.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
News, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Thursday, October 13th. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 15 degrees with some light rain. Here's what's making news this hour. The public inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act to deal with the convoy protests has officially begun here in the capital. The justice leading the inquiry says he seeks to uncover the truth about what led to the invocation of the Emergencies Act, why it was declared, and how it was used. He says while time is limited, he hopes to get through 65 witnesses over 6 weeks, including the Prime Minister, leaders of the convoy, and police officials. Ottawa mayoral candidate Mark Sutcliffe has released his economic growth plan for the city if elected mayor. Sutcliffe tells City News it's time to take a completely different approach at City Hall by creating a conducive environment for small businesses and to create a one-stop shop to navigate paperwork and permits. Ottawa residents will also see a new annual cultural event in the city, as well as a new attraction that will bring more visitors to Ottawa if Mark Sutcliffe gets the top job. Ontarians aged 12 and older will be eligible to get Pfizer's bivalent COVID-19 booster starting next Monday. The province says appointments can now be booked through the COVID-19 vaccination portal or by phone. On November 1st, flu shots will also be available through healthcare providers, public health units, and pharmacies. Flu shots can be safely given at the same time or at any time before or after the COVID-19 vaccine. City News Time 11:33. I'm Danielle Bain. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's time for our deep dive into international news with Professor Elliot Tepper. It's The World with Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, Rob.
It's really nice to hear from you once more, Professor. Now, let's begin again this week with what has been happening with Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, illegal invasion of Ukraine, war in Europe. For weeks, Ukraine seemed to have momentum, taking back territory. Then there was the bombing on the bridge in Crimea. And since then, a response from Putin, seriously increasing missile attacks. There's a new general from Russia with the in charge of the Ukrainian war effort now, who's supposed to be just ruthless. Where are we in this war this week?
To sum it up, on the one hand, I think we have indeed seen major military escalation by Russia. So we are into another ratcheting up or another phase in this war since we last talked about it a week ago. And you've talked about some of the components and elements of it. On the other hand, there's also now a major military upgrade for Ukraine in the works. So again, I think we're entering now a different phase, a different stage of this conflict. The happy birthday, President President Putin. The attack on the Kerch Bridge was very spectacular. I suppose you can get off the web some of the actual images of the bridge blowing up, and if you go back a ways, you'll find out why this is particularly significant. Mr. Putin had a 70th birthday, and 2 days later the bridge was attacked. It was quite successfully attacked. So what is this? Crimea, as you know, was seized by Russia in 2014. And the bridge was a connector between Crimea and Russia itself, and over that bridge flowed a lot of military equipment going into the south, around Kherson, where a lot of the fighting is going on now. But Mr. Putin himself was the first to drive across that bridge. That was May 2018. So his personal involvement in and pride in that bridge and its symbolic importance was attacked, but also the militarily significant component was also attacked. They say they've got it pretty well under control, the Russians do, and that they've now arrested 8 people, and they are quite clearly blaming Ukraine. Ukraine is staying silent on whether they were responsible, but expressing an awful lot of pleasure.
Okay. If the main tactic going forward here for Putin, given losses on the ground, is going to be these missile attacks, at least it seems to be the case now. What Ukraine needs and what it's asked for is missile defense.
Right.
And there may be options there. So what are the options? What can NATO offer in terms of missile defense to Ukraine?
Well, the attack itself has been by missiles, but also by drones. There's been the response to the Kerch Bridge bombing was this unprecedentedly high level of attacks, but we should talk about those a bit before we move on, because
Yep.
they were twofold. They were clearly aimed at civilians. There's no question at all that apartment blocks, a children's playground, a bridge, this attack on civilians has been now through the United Nations called a crime, a war crime. You're not supposed to do that. But also, there's been a sustained effort, which will likely continue, to take out the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. So the ability to have heat and lights in the winter, which is coming, one of their major, you mentioned a general, one of their major generals in Russian history has always been General Winter and General Mud. So they are counting on the winter to daunt Ukraine after attacking the energy infrastructure, but also to crack the resolve of Europe and elsewhere, but primarily Europe, by saying, you know, you wanted our energy and now you don't, and we'll reopen the Nord Stream 2. We'll give you the energy. And the EU said, no, thank you. We'll talk about Nord Stream 1. But the point of all this is that this major military escalation by Russia seems to be continuing. It involves a lot of drones, and there's no... at the moment, Ukraine doesn't have a lot of defense, so that takes us to that major military upgrade for Ukraine. What can the West do? What can Canada do? And it isn't only the West. We should point out there's been an immediate response. There's something called the Contact Group, which the U.S. put together. 50 countries, Rob, are in that, saying we want to help Ukraine. We'll find ways to do it. Russia has created, as I've pointed out with you a few times, the new Europe. Suddenly Europe is far more united, as is NATO. So Germany is now stepping up in a major way that they had not done before and providing what could be what Mr. Zelensky wants, which is he's calling it an air shield. There will not be, Rob, a no-fly zone imposed over Ukraine, which has been done in other parts of the world during other conflicts, because the key issue here is, once again, how does Ukraine acquire the defenses it needs from the West and NATO? The G7, by the way, has done some things here. But NATO is now saying, we want to replace all of the stuff we're giving from our own stocks. Lots being transferred, and that's now emerging as an issue as war production has to ramp up. But all of this adds up to the fact that in Ukraine, they are fighting a war without air cover. They need to get that cover I've been trying to track down, by the way, where all those missiles and drones are coming from, and I can't get a definitive answer on it. But what we do know is that Russia has now created a need which will be met somehow for an air cover. You mentioned the other response by Russia, which is they've now unified all of the command of the Russian forces in Ukraine under a single general. He does have a reputation well earned for being ruthless. He's called General Armageddon in some quarters.
General Armageddon, yeah.
Yeah, how about that for a colorful tag? It's also been pointed out by really knowledgeable, the Defense Intelligence Unit of the UK has said, wait, we know this guy, saying that he's being put in because others were not ruthless enough. That's simply wrong. He's already been there since July, which I remembered him being moved in. This is the Russian tactic to keep going forward, and it's not really a change except in intensity. This general was involved in Tajikistan and quelling Chechnya, where there was a spot of trouble there, so the Russians moved in with this general involved and just leveled the capital city. We keep overlooking the fact that Russia has been behaving, as we see in Ukraine, in Syria for a very long time. There's been war crimes committed there. He's perfected the techniques there of breaking civilian will by attacking hospitals and bakeries and, attacking civilians. So we are in a different place today than we were a week ago when you and I talked about it. There's another element, though, that I'm trying to keep an eye on, and that's the case of the missing submarine. The Arctic Fleet by Russia is pretty extensive, and that's something we have to be concerned about. But a sub apparently quietly slipped away and is headed toward who knows where. This sub is capable of launching a nuclear drone, perhaps. There's a chilling web video you can get on, what a nuclear drone can do. It can explode offshore. This was done to scare the UK earlier. It can raise a tsunami of 1,600 feet of radioactive water and then crash down and destroy everything in its path. So I'm kind of curious where this sub is, and I'm sure that Western intelligence is following it closely.
My goodness. I have to ask you about this since, it is about the wealthiest man in the world, very high profile, but Elon Musk, trying to play diplomat, tweeted, he has 100 million Twitter followers. Ukraine-Russia peace, redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if that is the will of the people. Crimea, formerly part of Russia, as it has been since 1783. Until Khrushchev's mistake, water supply to Crimea assured Ukraine remains neutral.
Yeah.
And he's told to take a hike by Ukrainian leadership. He's not the only one who thinks that, right? When you hear stuff like that, what do you think?
I think I wouldn't look to Elon Musk as a great diplomat. He's now denied he ever spoke to Putin. My concern about Elon Musk in all of this, is taking over Twitter and now is apparently dabbling in global politics, is he's taking his eye off the ball. We need Elon Musk to focus on SpaceX. We need Elon Musk to focus on electric vehicles. If driverless cars start to crash, or if, heaven forbid, one of those rockets that the U.S. is now, hiring him to launch people into space and on the way to Mars, certainly the satellite systems that he's putting up, he needs to keep his eyes on what he's good at, and we need to stop talking about him.
Okay. Well, let's talk just very quickly, and then we'll stop and talk about China. I want to get your take on what the Finnish Prime Minister said. Sanna Marin, I believe, asked, what will it take to end this war? And this is what the Prime Minister of Finland had to say.
Way out of the conflict.
Way out of the conflict. The way out of the conflict is for Russia to leave Ukraine. Okay. That's the way out of the conflict. Thank you.
What do you think about that?
This is basically President Zelensky's message to the world. The Baltic states, which have been under Russian control and don't want that to come back, Finland is joining NATO, which is an extraordinary turnaround for them, along with Sweden, unless Turkey blocks it somehow. But this is basically the message all along, that this is not about Russia and Ukraine. This is about, if Russia succeeds in taking over Ukraine, it changes the geopolitics of the world. It changes the geopolitics of Europe. This is our war. It's not just Ukraine's war. That's what President Zelensky's been saying. And now you have a prime minister of a seriously affected state that's saying the same thing.
Okay, we'll be right back and talk about the Congress of the Chinese Communist Party set to begin. This is the Rob Snow Show with Professor Elliot Tepper, and this is City News.
What are we doing about COVID? Seems like the communications have been all about how everything's opening up, and yet here in Ottawa we're experiencing our 7th wave, so a bit of a contradiction there.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Enjoy the fresh outdoors. Play an important role in the lives of school-age children. Get paid to make a difference in your community. Become a crossing guard. We are currently recruiting crossing guards for the school year. We offer a competitive wage with various perks and opportunities for bonuses. Join the Ottawa Safety Council in keeping kids safe in the nation's capital. Find out more at crossing-guard.ca.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Professor Elliot Tepper is back with us. The World with Professor Tepper every week here on the Rob Snow Show. The Chinese Communist Party is set to convene its 20th Party Congress, during which Xi Jinping, Professor, is expected to further consolidate power and secure a history-making third term as party leader. What does it mean for the world?
Well, it means quite a bit. What it means is that Xi Jinping has consolidated his position within the party, and he's intent on seeing to it that the party consolidates further its position as the lead in terms of the state, taking over and managing the state, even if asserting party control over the state leads to a slowdown economically. That's more important ideologically. So what we have is seeing in front of us the return of a cult of personality and the return of any semblance of democratic renewal within the party itself is now gone. Here's a communique from the 7th plenary. It's quite complicated. What happens is that there are 2,300 delegates from across the party, across the country, gather, and they in turn select a new party central committee, and that central committee picks the chair of the Communist Party and some other key offices, and the new prime minister. And if there's going to be an amendment to the Constitution, they amend the Constitution. But we have to remember what's happened. Xi Jinping has emerged as quite a different leader than his predecessor. China under Chairman Mao was very successful in capturing the country, but Chairman Mao also created enormous turmoil. And ever since then, the party itself has set rules for itself, saying we have to have a way of having succession. We have to have calmness in order to maintain our hold on power. So they've said, okay, every 5 years we're going to have a party congress, and at that point we will select the leaders going forward, and then after, in the 10th year, then whoever's been the sitting prime minister, or central leader, will then be replaced. So we have now Mr. Xi Jinping saying, all of that's gone. I'm now going to go for a third term, which is not contemporary Chinese Communist Party practice. I'm now going to go for a third term, which basically means I'm now going to be leader for life if I so choose.
Wow. Okay. We have less than 5 minutes left. I must ask you. Front page of the National Post today is an opinion piece by Nazanin Afshan-Jam McKay. And I'll read you, for people who are unaware, human rights activist, author, public speaker, former Miss Canada, co-founder Stop Child Executions, founder Nazanin Foundation, born in Iran, fled to Canada when she was 2 after her father was imprisoned and tortured by the Revolutionary Guard. Grew up in Vancouver, now lives in Nova Scotia with her husband, Peter McKay.
Yeah, Peter McKay.
And their children. The headline is, I know the opinion writers don't write the headlines, but the headline is quite provocative. The 2022 Iranian Revolution has begun.
Right.
Has it?
We talked about this a week ago, perhaps even 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
The uprising is continuing. That voice that you see on the front page here there's been other major voices around the world of people who originate in Iran, have left Iran, and are saying, now, this is not the same as before. We've had uprisings in the past. This is not an uprising. It's not a protest. It is, in fact, a revolution. After Mahsa Amini's death in custody, captured by the morality police. So where are we going on this?
Yeah.
I think here's a quote from somebody inside Iran, a young woman. I hope a few years, she taped herself on TikTok. I hope in a few years when I look back, I will be happy that everything has changed for the better. She was shot in the head a few hours later. So what's happening now is this. The regime is continuing its relentless crackdown. It's now moving more closely to attack her home area, Kurdistan, the Kurdish portion of Iran. They are saying this is all a plot from outsiders, that these are not real uprisings against us. But I think what's becoming clearer is, let's go back to what we said a week or two ago. We need policy clarity when we talk about Iran now in terms of all these different stories. First is that the policy framework is this. This is no longer about reforming the regime from within or without. It's all about now replacing it. And I think we have to get that clear, because all of the uprisings in the past, and this one is not yet the largest of them. In 2019, there was an even bigger uprising, and 2009 was the Green Movement, which was a major attempt at saying, no, we can't have a rigged election. Those were about making the regime, the theocratic regime that came to power in 1979, either reform from within, let's have reformers in charge, or at least let's make them work better for the economy. All that's now gone. So I think the slogans that we're now seeing coming out really show that. The slogans now are death to the dictator. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge change from the past. It's about women, liberty, and freedom. So young women in particular, but women are now leading the path in this. And I think, we have a government that says it's a feminist foreign policy.
Even schoolgirls.
These are schoolgirls, but but it's also, we need to focus on that aspect of it. But we also need to focus on the fact that other sectors of society are now joining in. So we have the energy workers, the only thing they've got is oil, basically, under this regime, and it's a profoundly corrupt regime. But the energy workers have joined in, men have joined in. It's multi-generational, but it is being led by women. My connecting of the two stories today, Russia and Iran, is that we are watching tragedy and heroism, and we have to keep that in mind. My second part of the policy framework or clarity is that we now have to plan ahead for a successor regime, because what we've seen in the past is that, the day after a successful people's movement drives out a dictator, what happens? What happened last time was a theocracy came to power.
Right. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, well, be sure you have wishes in mind that you can support. And I think Canada can play no role in all this. There has to be a plan for a successor regime which has democratic representation from the people of Iran, and they're willing to then join the Comity of Nations. And my third policy clarity of policy framework for what's going on is we have to be sure, Rob, that this regime is never allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon.
Professor, always a great pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
It's good to talk to you, Rob.
Okay, we'll speak soon. Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. Sam LaPrade and the Sam LaPrade Show coming up next on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.